Thank you. Good morning, everybody. We will get underway. We're a couple of minutes behind time, but not too bad. I will open our meeting this morning with a karakia. Whakatakata ho ki te uru, whakatakata ho ki te tonga, kia makina kina ki uta, kia mataratara ki tai. E hiaki ana ti atakura, he teo, he huka, hi hai hu, ti he maori ora. Apologies. We have an apology from Councillor Ponta from GW. He has gone to Korodon's Tangi this morning. Mayor Mark, would you move the... Oh, sorry, and I have Mayor Holborough, who she is also attending, and we have Councillor Halliday as an alternate. Thank you. So, Mayor Mark, you will move the apologies, and Councillor Pennant, do you mind seconding? Thank you. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against. Carried. Any conflict of interest declarations this morning? No. And we have no public participation. Welcoming online, we have Mayor Baker, Councillor Woodcock and Councillor Edwards. I have you in front of me, members, so hopefully if you have questions or queries or comments, wave enthusiastically and I will see you. All right, our first item is the confirmation of the public minutes, which have been circulated. Mover and a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Pannett. Thank you, Mayor Guppy. If there's no corrections, I'll put that there are true and correct record. All those in favour say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Our first paper is agreeing the scope, timeframes and next steps of our RTC, and I am handing over to Emma and Grant for that, please.
Kia ora koutou. This report presents a proposed approach to developing the components required to deliver the RLTP by the August 27 deadline. It introduces that concept of the future network plan and proposes using the existing 2021 RLTP strategic objectives as that starting point to begin that work. The paper also provides a brief summary of that background evidence that has been collected to date. I have got one minor correction since you received a copy of the report. In paragraph 20, the report, Our Region's Transport System 2050 Levers for System Change, is inaccurately attributed to the Wellington Transport Analytics Unit. It was in fact prepared by Greater Wellington Transport Strategy Team officers that you heard from previously. Other than that, I will take the report as read and I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Emma. Questions from members? Councillor Pennant.
Thank you for that correction, because I was looking up the transport analytics people and I thought they don't look like the sort of people who would do that kind of work. Okay, so I do really appreciate the work of Greater Wellington staff, as previously said, and I had a good conversation with the staff member at morning tea. So my question really is around those 2021 objectives, which I don't think are necessarily that consistent with this new approach. It still looks a little bit business as usual. So you've got, good affordable travel choices. Well, no one could disagree with that. Compact urban form, that's fine too, the safety element. But the impact on the environment is minimised. It's a very 1990s kind of RMA approach. And then the journeys to and from the region are connected, resilient and reliable. I appreciate that will be very political, but that looks to me like lots of roads too.
Through the chair. Thanks for that. We are proposing just using these as the starting point to get going. So the wording, there will be opportunities to workshop that wording for the next regional land transport plan. And I think we'll be hearing and collating all that feedback that we're getting from different places. This is sort of a starting point. Is there enough kind of ticks on those different objectives, that we're covering enough different kind of components of what we need to see out of the network to be able to develop just that future network plan part. So it's not even looking at the full kind of gambit of that strategic framework. It's just to get the the future network plan bit underway. So it's sort of, we've got to start somewhere. Is that an okay part to start?
That gives me heaps of confidence. So thank you for that. And then just, sorry, the other thing, just Grant did answer my question, but that thing around the feedback, the walking stuff really does need to be thought through very carefully. So I appreciate we've got the constraints set by NZTA, but we just somehow have to make sure that wherever we can, so this is the metro areas, I appreciate it's difficult for the rural, that it is that walking is made better, because it's just getting pushed down a bit.
If it, through the chair, if it comforts you at all, I've started having early conversations with some of those advocates as part of that community engagement. The first thing that we're doing is, I've said to the contacts, part of this process is really about building those relationships that are enduring rather than that transactional, tell me what you know. I've had a bit of a chat and said, hey, look, we've heard a lot from you in the past and we've got a lot of information of what we already know, so why don't we collate that? And then we can go back and say, hey, this is what we've heard, what else do you want to add? Rather than us expecting them to spend a whole lot of their time kind of putting something together. And I've been doing that with quite a few of the other groups as well, just so that we can go to them with something that's fairly well formed of what we've heard in the past and get them and use that as a starting point. So it's not necessarily answering your question around adding it in, because that's still a bit tricky, as you've mentioned with the NZTA, but it's at least forming that baseline of what we understand.
Thank you, Councillor Pennant. Any other questions? Mayor Baker.
Thank you. Sorry, excellent insights in this. We did wonder if there was any reflections or lessons learnt from the current LTP they're going to flow to the next one. For us, we're working obviously in our Northern Growth area, which is going really well for transport challenges, but with the demise we have in Eastern Porewa with Te Ranui, and we've lost those transport challenges. So things mix up, but we just wondered if there were any other changes.
To the chair, can I just get a clarification? Were you wondering on what information we had through that engagement?
Any reflections or lessons? Are there anything? We can't do anything about the two in our area, obviously, but we wondered what was going to flow to the next RLTP, whether we'd picked up anything different.
I think this, if I'm understanding correctly, and please correct me, part of the work that's still to be done, given that we've got a few years to go before, is to look at those kind of more of the central government and regional policy changes. So there's a lot of changes to be coming through around that RMA and spatial and all those sorts of things. So we need to be monitoring those really carefully and making sure that what we how we incorporate those work well for each of the TAs, so that you can use them to the best of your abilities. Did you want to add anything, Grant?
I think my only one is, yes, there are lessons learned that we pulled through from each one, but I think the key lesson that we've learned looking back through the 24 process and the 21 process is the absence of that long-term view of what the network needs to look like and what it needs to evolve to. So that's probably the biggest lesson that we're taking through. But also engaging with each of the communities to understand what their needs are across the region. And as an example, reflecting that to the special purpose road out along the South Wairarapa coast, how does that feature in it? And also having a vehicle by which, and this I'm also thinking about the Rimataka crossing, where people's needs, even if it's not likely to be funded, can be represented as something which is of interest either to the region or the individual council. So that's probably the key lesson in application that we're taking into the next plan, that the absence of that long-term, I'm not saying the long-term view wasn't there, but a really physical manifestation so that you can see it and being clear about what it is and isn't.
Glad you mentioned that Rimataka crossing, because it's still up on my high list. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. Mayor Mark, there's only one.
Chair. Look, thank you for that comment. That is heartening, and I guess more so given a graph that didn't get a lot of commentary, but it is when you join it together with the population movements, which clearly again reiterate that Wellington isn't growing. The Wairarapa astonishingly is. But if you look at the graph on State Highway traffic volume, Wellington City, the outlier there is State Highway 2 Wairarapa. So, I'm hopeful that that data forces some thinking long term as to what that looks like, and will drop down then into a focus on how do we see the Rimataka crossing? How do we see that as being, how does it impact on Wellington City, on the other TAs, and on the general economy? And if we want to talk well-beings, well, is that a dangerous road or is that not compared to other roads? And if you look at what we now have in Tararua, is there a business case to be written or a need for a business case to be considered as something that I would hope would drop into this plan on just those two pieces of information alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Mark. Mr. Gordon?
Really just two comments. I think this is a very pragmatic way to start it. You've got to start there, and I'm also strongly supportive of trying to vision a 2050 and look at what levels of confidence. So this would certainly have QRL support.
Are there any further questions from members? Oh, sorry. Woody has your hand up.
Yep. Thanks, Adrian. Thanks for the comments about the Rimataka Hill and the coastal road for us. Yeah, it's probably no secret that I'm not a great advocate of the supposed new road over the Rimatakas. Mainly due to the fact that I believe the first thing we've got to worry about on this side of the hill is our infrastructure, and is it going to cope if a new road went through there? So there's those sort of things that have to be taken into account too. It's all great to have a great view on this transport and pumping another 100,000 people into the Wairarapa, but what happens then? How do we house them? How do we supply sewage plants, water plants, all the rest of it, and the infrastructure needed for it? So it's great to have these discussions and have that on the map as a transport view, but sometimes you've got to look outside the box a bit and have a look at how it affects the rest of the community in other ways. Yep, thanks, Ta.
Thanks, Councillor Woodcock. We're sort of morphing into debate here a wee bit. Are there any other questions? If not, I will look for a mover and a seconder. We're being asked to note the evidence base that has been developed to date to inform the Regional Land Transport Plan. We're agreeing to the proposed high-level scope and timeframes, and we're agreeing to use the enduring 30-year strategic objectives. And I'm just stressing again, as Emma did, this is first base only. There's a lot of work to go. It's getting to first base as opposing to starting with a blank piece of paper. So do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, Ms. Spate, and thank you, Councillor Pannett. Do either of you wish to speak to this?
Look, thank you to the officers for giving me some reassurance about that 30-year objective. It might sound picky, but language does define how we operate in the world, and I think we do need to have a look at that. I also do think the discussion that we had previously was interesting. Thank you, Mayor Mark. It's always useful to hear that perspective articulated, and I just hope that we will be able to look at probably where the costs lie. So your potholes, this has been pointed out to me, are being caused by road freight, and they're being heavily subsidised. So we need to make sure that there is a much more even playing field for all the modes, so that we can get the movement that we need to get to. And just trying to represent the future, we have to get this right. We're going to leave this to our children and our grandchildren if we don't sort it out. So there's quite a lot of work to do.
Thank you, Councillor Pannett. Ms. Spate, no comment? Oh, should I say no further comment? Sounds good. All right, I will put the recommendations 1, 2 and 3. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Our next item is the Metlink update, and I am looking to Ms. Gain. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Kia ora tātou. Today I'm just presenting an update, a sometime update that we provide to the committee. You've had this in your papers, so I'll just whiz through and happy to take any questions at the end. And just to note that this initial section with the patronage information is information to the end of April, which is the latest reports we had and we've reported to Transport Committee. So just in terms of our patronage on the network, we continue to see bus patronage being high, and we're really back at pre-COVID levels. We have a continuing, like a change in travel patterns. We have more off-peak travel than we had pre-COVID, but all in all we're at 100% or a bit higher than pre-COVID levels on the bus network. On rail, the situation isn't the same. We are sitting at around about 75-80% of our pre-COVID rail patronage. We've got a really noticeable decline in the number of people who are travelling on rail from the further out stations. So people coming from Waikanae, Parapara Umu, and people coming from Masterton through to Wellington is, those outer zones got really declining patronage. So we know that we've got issues on the Wairarapa line in particular, and I've got a slide to talk to that. But we're looking at how we might be able to encourage people back onto rail, particularly for the longer journeys. Rail as well, it's very marked that there is a lower patronage on Mondays and Fridays, and slightly higher patronage in the weekends than pre-COVID. So we've definitely seen that change, and it reflects a change internationally actually in public transport use. In terms of performance, you'll see that bus reliability, that top left graph, is good following the driver shortages that we experienced in 2023. We've got our bus network performing pretty well. There are some particular exceptions on particular routes, and we're working with the operators around some of those particular routes, but generally speaking, performance is good on the bus network. Rail is a bit of a different story. I'll talk specifically to the Wairarapa line shortly, but there is inconsistency. Part of that is staff related, part of that we would attribute to network, and so that's a real area of focus for us at the moment. And you can see from the cancellation graphs in the next row that the cancellations generally are low compared to the peaks during 2022 around that time. So just in terms of key projects, these first few slides deal with the Regional Public Transport Plan. We have concluded our Regional Public Transport Plan hearings, and at our council meeting on Thursday this week, the council will be receiving the report of the hearings committee and adopting the Regional Public Transport Plan. A couple of particular points about it. We were very pleased with the nearly 1,000 submissions on the RPTP, a good spread from different parts of the region and different perspectives. So we were very pleased with that process and the nature of the things that were raised. Key themes in the submissions are on this slide. Just in terms of that third bullet point there about the particular areas that might be relevant to members of the committee, those bullet points reflect what was in the submissions. I can tell you that things that have been recommended by the committee to be taken forward subject to funding, which is 3 words that we are using for everything at the moment, Wainui Amata connection to Hutt Hospital in particular, extending the Waikanae Otaki Live-In connection and the frequency of that bus service, looking at Owhiro Bay services, and looking at extension into Aotea from Pororoa. So those things are part of the resolutions and will be incorporated in the RPTP. And in terms of accessibility, we're looking at accessibility both in terms of people with mobility impairments, but also things like on-bus announcements, making sure that they're working properly, and looking at some other the accessibility of particular hubs is one of the focuses of our work in that area going forward. Just in terms of rail network challenges, this is a general thing around the rail network overall. We know that we've got have had an ongoing funding challenge, particularly in relation to the backlog renewals. I guess on this slide, the thing to note at the bottom there, the milestone around the budget 2025, there was an additional amount of 143 million that was allocated for Auckland and Wellington Metro Rail Network. So we've been working with KiwiRail to land that around about, and Dave, are you happy for me to talk about the amount of money that so around 90 to 100 million of that will come to Wellington, and we're just finalising the details of that with KiwiRail at the moment. That is positive. The MROM review is the Metropolitan Rail Operating Model. That is the thing that sets out the funding settings. The work has been going on that for a year or 18 months now. It's just been being refreshed. So we are I'm on a senior officials group, as is Dave Gordon and other representatives assisting the MOT with that work. We are in conversations at the moment about the timing of that work and when advice might go up to ministers. So we'll keep the committee informed about where that is getting to. What we are expecting out of that work, and we've been told to expect, is that we might need to look at a higher local share into rail network funding, which will potentially be a challenge in this current environment. So we work through that carefully with all the parties involved in that process. Just in terms of the Wairarapa line, so we've done obviously had less than satisfactory performance on the Wairarapa line in particular, and particularly since the block of line over the summer, during which the Rimataka Tunnel work was completed. Following that, we had the unfortunate situation of Transdev having insufficient staff to be able to run the full train timetable. We've been doing a lot of work with them and a lot of communication with the community to try to ease the burden of those challenges. Where we're at, into what we've done in relation to that, is Transdev, we've cancelled specific services on an ongoing basis so that passengers know what to expect. So currently the 3:38 departure from Masterton and the 6:18 departure from Wellington are bus replaced, and also the evening services on Fridays. That is likely to be the case through until September, when we expect Transdev to have sufficient train managers in place to be able to run the full train service. We will not resume the full timetable until we are confident that we can continue to run the full timetable. In the meantime, at our last council meeting, the council decided to provide fare refunds for those people using those bus replace services. So that will come into effect on the 1st of July and will be in place for the time that those bus replace services are happening because of the staff shortage. Just for people's information, the way that works with Snapper is that people still need to tag on and tag off, and they will actually pay the fare, which on a Monday Snapper will refund people for that fare. And the reason that that is set up like that is that we need the information about where people are travelling, and we also have just been through the process of getting people to learn to do that, and we don't want them to stop doing it, because it's a really important part of our running the transport network, is having the information about where people are travelling, so to make sure that we can capture the appropriate fare. But the Snapper process is to automatically refund it on a weekly basis. The other thing, just in terms of information flow around that situation, is we've been providing daily sit reps to our councillors and weekly sit reps to the Wairarapa mayors and MPs. That information is all on our website if anybody wants to have a look at that, who doesn't get that information. Just in terms of buses replacing trains action plan, so this is a piece of work we've been developing over the last year. The intent is to have buses replacing trains as a proper Metlink service, so we want it to be more consistent, more visible, easier to use. So we have been doing quite a lot in that regard. There are changes at platform 10 at the Wellington railway station. We have using the pink signage wherever we can to indicate about buses replacing trains, including at the bus stops that they use. And we've been trialling some technology to enable the services to be tracked, which is not something that's been able to happen previously. So we're taking the next step on that trial at the next. Actually, I think it happened at the Matariki block of line. This slide this outlines the other other aspects of the action plan, but that work is all proceeding well. Just a quick update on our regional rail rolling stock. The procurement for the new trains is going well. We are now down to a preferred supplier, and we'll be looking to award a contract hopefully in July, August time. Other work associated and related to purchase of the trains. The purchase of the trains is also rail network work that Kiwi Rail needs to do. And we need to have a depot built in the Masterton yard, so that work is all proceeding well to the time frame that we had planned. And just to note a couple of other projects, so the bike racks on buses, there was a compliance issue of those in terms of the bike racks obscuring the headlights of some models of bus. Our bus operators are proceeding well with the work to have the bike racks operational on the 1st of July. So we expect to be doing that, which will be good. The Route 2, we are still planning for the introduction of electric articulated vehicles on the Route 2. Where we're at with that at the moment is that Kinetic is looking at who they're going to buy the buses from. And when that exercise is completed, then they'll be placing an order. So we expect that to happen in the next few months. And we are continuing to work on the accessibility action plan, as I mentioned before. So that's, yeah, I'm happy to take any
Can I
questions.
just ask, Madam Chair, is that order for the first 5 buses, or for the complete however many buses they need?
Yeah, through Chair, it is for the first 5 buses, and we'll get those in and operating before we push the button on a further order.
Okay.
That's the end.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Pennant.
It's us 3 and then other people can have a go. Sorry, I'm asking this really on behalf of some of my colleagues. The regional rail, how many people are going to be coming from the Manawatu into the Wellington region?
I don't have that information in my head, but the service is the current Capital Connection service, which is effectively what that replaces. Comes in once a day and goes back from Palmerston North to Wellington once a day and returns service in the evening. There will be about 3 times as many services with the new trains. We expect that there will be they will be well patronised. The piece that we think we expect that will pick up a lot of patronage, which currently doesn't because of the nature of the service, is actually servicing the towns in between. So, for example, between Shannon and Levin or Shannon and Otaki. So yeah, so we have been. Ministry of Transport actually have been asking us questions about the patronage projections, and we've had another look at them, and we're confident that they will be realised.
So this is part of a national strategy. Other big TAs are subsidising rail so that we can build a sort of a national rail network back. Because obviously Wellington regional ratepayers don't need to worry about what's happening in Shannon so much. Or Palmerston North.
So no, it's not national, but it is. So it's a joint exercise, a joint project, I suppose, between us and Horizons. So,
I just mean other TAs will be doing the same equivalent in their areas. Are they?
Well, the only other equivalent really is the Tahuia service, which goes from Hamilton through to Auckland. So it's Waikato Regional Council and going into Auckland.
Okay, so right. So I guess that's just the concern that some Wellington City councillors feel that there's a lot of money going into rail, and then the buses, which we use a lot, don't always get the resources they need. Although, Darren, I do appreciate our public transport system. It does work very well. The next thing was around. No.
Your hands are on the table.
No. It's just, but that is, and you'll hear that this afternoon, I'm sure, Darren, from some of those colleagues. The accessibility work. Just overall, how are you tracking? Because we've been aware that this is a gap for a long time. So, like, how many more stops or how many more stations need to be made more accessible overall? Do you think you're sort of heading in the right direction? So in the next 10 years, you'll have done a lot of this work?
So through you, Chair, the approach we're taking to the station accessibility is we're doing and I think the initial work's been done in terms of assessing which stations need what to happen to them, but we are not taking the approach of making every station accessible. And particularly because we're funding short, we are going to focus on identifying a short list of stations which we will make accessible, so that people know that on their journey to that station and using that station, everything will be lined up at that station. So that process of identifying those stations is underway at the moment, and then once we've identified which stations, we'll start we'll do the work at those stations. So our vision, I suppose, for that is that people will be able to have an end-to-end journey tracking through places that they know will be fully accessible.
But what about the people that can't get to those stations? Then they're not going to get an accessible journey.
So part of that work will include the bus connection, making sure that connections in are accessible, and then we also will have been doing a bit of work around actually outreach into the communities in terms of who's using the stations or who could be using the stations, and how do we support them to do that. So it's not only infrastructure related, the accessibility action plan. It is also some engagement with people around how we can help them to do things differently or teach them to do things, that kind of thing.
Okay, and just the last question for now is around the bus replacement. I almost sigh when I look at going out of the city, and I'm like, please let me have a train, but then it ends up being a bus. So people in the region really, I mean, I'm sure the regional council knows this, but really people are expecting to have 10 years of a degree of pain.
So yes, I mean, the upgrade of the rail network is a long-term program. So that's partly why we know that buses are not the same as trains, but that's why we want to make them as good as they can be. We are taking the approach of trying to make sure people have got information as far in advance as possible in terms of when the block of lines are happening, so that you can plan your activities, understanding whether there will be buses or trains. And in fact, we currently have 2 months of information on our website. We're just looking at having more, further in advance. But it is a thing that we're going to continue to need to provide.
Mayor Baker.
Yeah, the rail disruption is a bit of a pain, especially at the weekends, obviously, especially if there's sporting events on at the stadium. Great to see Aotearoa there. I just wondered where we were going with the landings, whether we were actually going to get a bus service up in there. I know it's been mentioned a few times, but they keep saying it's not coming. I just wondered if you had any update on that.
Through you, Chair, I believe that's being looked at as part of the new Route 59. We can come back to you with a specific update. I'm not exactly sure where that's at. And I should have said in the context of the Regional Public Transport Plan submissions that each territorial authority will be receiving a letter from us just outlining how we've dealt with the submissions.
Thank you. Further questions? No. Oh.
sorry, just the poor people on the trains. They are also just, it's going to take a while to get better. Like those stats are quite grim.
Yes, so the quite a lot of that is driven by the Wairarapa line issues.
Yeah.
But we're focused on that with Transdev and Kiwi Rail in terms of the things that aren't related to that.
In the Wairarapa, sorry, just like how long is it going to take to sort out?
So September, hopefully before September.
Okay, right, good.
Okay. Councillor Halliday.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for the report. Just a couple of things I want to touch on. Hearing what you're saying about the trains going out the district, but from an Old Taki perspective, we're right on that cusp. So very much looking forward to having that connection back to Kapiti and to the Wellington in general. Touching on that connection to Wellington though, we certainly have an issue up our way with an older demographic of having that direct access to Wellington Hospital. We don't have a hospital up our way. I notice here that the Wainuiomata connection to the Hutt Hospital is a priority, but we've actually got a huge issue on the Kapiti coast in that space. And it's seen the statistics with regards to hospital presentations, if you like. We're working that one at a different angle, but having the ability for some sort of direct service from Kapiti to that would be, well, just flagging it, shall we say?
Yes, through you, Chair. I think that was something that came up during the RPTP hearings, and I think we are looking at how we might provide potentially better wayfinding from the Wellington station through to the Hospital Express service. So yes, that is something that we're looking at and did come up.
And appreciate the wayfinding from Wellington. It's actually, especially with the older community, there's issues just getting to Wellington railway station and then navigating all that to get to hospital, you know, and a lot of those appointments are first thing in the morning, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of care given to how they get home on the tail end there as well. So I'm talking more from the Kapiti side of things rather than having a hub, should we say, at Wellington railway station. But I'll just keep banging along it with that one. Just reading the information, I brought this up before. I was just not concerned, but just with regards to workforce planning, where does that fit into all this? Because I noticed that there was a comments through the papers around a shortage of drivers, and both rail and buses as such. I appreciate some of that's contracted out, but is there a oversight plan or pathways or workforce pathways for that, bringing those people online?
Yes, through you, Chair. So through the bus driver shortage, which was in sort of 2023, we started paying a great deal more attention to the workforce and to our bus operators having adequate staffing. And through that process, they brought in a number of drivers from overseas. And one of the things with the overseas drivers is that their work visas will expire, and there's now new requirements of visas. So we are keeping a close eye on that with our operators in terms of making sure that people don't, their visas don't come to an end and suddenly we're in the same situation again. So we're actively monitoring that. On the rail front, it isn't something that we hadn't been actively monitoring it because there hadn't been a problem with it, and there probably had been a miscommunication or a lack of communication with us regarding the situation that Transdev found themselves in. And in fact, to be fair, I think the situation they found themselves in was a surprise to them as well, due to some training issues that happened. So we are now paying a lot more attention to that from the rail point of view as well. So I think it's fair to say that compared to when we first stepped into these contracts, when we really were very hands-off in terms of staffing and just we were requiring our operators to deliver the service, we're much more, we're talking to them a lot more and requiring more information from them in terms of staffing levels and that kind of thing.
Cool, because there's, I guess, for that younger set, showing it as a potential career pathway. Yes. But the other side of that one is also in our more mature demographics. There's a lot of people that are retraining, a lot of people that are being made redundant, and that sort of stuff. And there could be a good workforce consideration there as well, potentially. Yes. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Halliday. Mayor Mark?
Thank you. Look, we got a pretty good brief and a good rundown in the Wairarapa on this issue, but their staffing problems weren't just around training. Their staffing problems were also around failing to realise how many of their people were retiring and building in redundancies and systems to ensure that they were never short staffed. So my question is that they get the contract, they've got to deliver, they fail. What are the penalties? Are there clawbacks? Are there penalty clauses in the contract where they end up paying the ratepayer back?
So there is an abatement regime for failure to provide the services in the way that they're contracted, yes.
Yeah, Wairarapa would like to see that, I'm pretty sure.
Thank you, Mayor Mark. If there's no further questions, thank you. Metlink update. And I will close our meeting today with a karakia. Anuhia, anuhia, anuhia ki te uru tapanui. Ki wātea, ki māma, ki nāko, ki tinana. Te waroa e te ara te kata. Koe ra rongo whakaria aka reirunga. Ki tina, huie, tākie. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, those online.